my veins. Blue in one eye, red, white, and blue in my brain. I'm bulldog born. Bulldog, that's my breed. I was born to follow where the bulldogs lead.
Welcome, everyone, to Inside the Kennel podcast. What an episode we've got today. Please, Matty, let us know who's our guest for today's, what is it, episode 3? I've lost track, or 7 or something? Or
You're not getting that old already, Paul. This is number 2, and don't get ahead of yourself. Now, we have got the kennel master himself here with us, Dougie Hawkins. Doug's going to be joining us each and every week. And, of course, as part of this podcast, we're looking to digitalise an anthology of all our past players. So Doug's going to be here to introduce each player. And amazingly, we've got Clay Smith, who's going to be our guest today, a premiership player. So, yeah, welcome, Dougie.
Matty, Paul, how are you, boys? You well?
Yeah, good, Doug. I'm a bit worried Matty's using some big words there. And anthologise, digitise. Matty, bring it down a notch, mate.
I'm confused already, Paul. You've got me confused already, Matty.
Fantastic. Well, listen, Dougie, we would love to hear your thoughts on Premiership player Clay Smith. What, from your perspective, from the stands, what sort of player was he?
Well, we go back now, obviously, don't we? We go back and I got a feeling, tell me I'm right or wrong here, he retired at a very young age. He would have been only 24, 25. I think that. And we probably didn't see... We us Bulldogs didn't get a chance to see the best of Clay Smith, but I can always go back now regarding Clay Smith. He had super courage. He had super courage, and he could play footy. The kid could play footy, and outside of his courage, he could play footy. And that final series in 2016, the 4 games that he was involved in, the Eagles game, Hawthorn game, and the one that stood out for me particularly was that prelim final against GWS. Tell me, boys, I'm right or wrong. He kicked 3 or 4 goals.
Yeah, kicked 4, all in the first half, Doug, including the very first goal of the game.
Yeah.
You know, he just set the spark, didn't he? Set the fuse in that game.
Yeah, no doubt, Matty and Paul. And and that's when you judge players, how they play in finals, when it counts. When it's a tough game, and that prelim final is no tougher and harder game than that against GWS, coached by Leon Cameron, one of our favourite sons at the Bulldogs, and Clay Smith put his hand up, he stood up, and I thought that prelim final performance by Clay Smith was just absolutely outstanding, and his grand final was fantastic as well. So for me, Clay Smith, he gets a big tick, and I'm just disappointed for the young lad that he couldn't able to play fulfill his long-term future at the Bulldogs, because I'm sure it was a knee injury. Is that correct, knee, boys?
Well, he actually did had 3 knee reconstructions.
3 knees.
You're a person who, 1986. You went down with the dreaded knee reco. How difficult is it to come back?
Guys, it's really hard. It's really hard. I know Clay missed a fair bit of footy from those 3, obviously, reconstructions. I missed 12 months. And it's all about coming back, getting that confidence again, and that able to jump, land. And I'll be honest, I was never the same player. I was never the same player that I was in 1985 and obviously 86 before I did my knee. I was never the same player. I had to learn...
Some players don't come back, Doug. Some players, I remember Chris Conley, who's a Golden Valley boy, did his knee, never played again. I mean, that's around your era. It might have been. But the technology back then, I would have thought was pretty medieval, I suspect.
Yeah, Paul, it was, Matty. I know I was very fortunate. We had an absolute outstanding surgeon in David Young. David Young reconstructed my knee. He told me my knee was a bit like a road accident victim.
Wow.
He put an artificial Gore-Tex fibre, which was like a bit of thread, as my anterior cruciate. I snapped my medial ligament. My posterior was already done anyway, and my cartilage was absolutely smashed to smithereens. So David Young performed a magnificent job on my knee, and I give credit to Mick Malthouse as well, because I wanted to come back about 10 months. I was ready to go. And Mick said, Dougie, you're 26 coming up, you're not coming back
Right.
until I tell you you're coming back. And you're going to have a full 12 months, son. And you'll come back, and I'm telling you right now, you'll play 4 or 6 in the seconds in the Magoos, and then I'll bring you into the seniors when I think it's the right time. And I reckon the two blokes that the physiotherapist, Greg Cunningham, was an absolute fantastic as well, and of course, Jake Landsberger and these blokes, it's just, just great people, great footy club people. Footscray, Western Bulldogs. Okay, Mick's had plenty of, a few clubs in his time. But again, I'll just say, boys, David Young, best in the business.
Yeah, wow. Well, you've got to be conservative with your return. And I think, Clay came back, I think maybe his third knee reconstruction, he actually went off the ground from memory and came back on. And I think he tried to play through it, and then it just must have popped again. And that was the end. And, you could have, I remember the murmur in the crowd that day. And I think we were playing against St Kilda, and the players barely came back out after that. We led by about 9 goals and ended up losing. So the emotional toll of that game must have been huge. But, that probably would have signalled the end for most players. And somehow Clay returned to actually win a premiership medal.
Yeah, I think Matty and Paul, I think I hit it on the head when we first started talking about him. His courage was just enormous, absolutely outstanding. And I think the young bloke now is coaching Point Cook Bulldogs, I think.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. Steve Koliniuk is his assistant down there.
Is he Steve Koliniuk? Is he? And I got a feeling Luke, his teammate from the 2016 grand final, Luke Dalhouse. I think Luke Dalhouse might be. Is that right? Is he playing there as well?
I did read that. Yes.
That is right. I think it's right.
Get the band back together, Doug.
Yeah, I think that's correct. And they've just signed up a boy from Bacchus Marsh too, Daniel Burton.
Okay.
But he's actually originally a Point Cook boy, and he's won a couple of medals here in the best in the competition, and he's a big ruckman. He's gone back to his original club. And he's doing a bit of boxing. Yes, right. He's had 2 or 3 fights, Clay Smith.
Well, he has, absolutely. And that's, his name's Clay, so it's like a Cassius Clay there. And, I guess, nice. I think in some ways, he was a bit of a fighter on the field, whether it be fighting through those injuries, but he just scrapped his way. And, sometimes he wasn't, the most polished player, but my God, could he, put his head down and just run through a brick wall, really.
He floats like a butterfly, Paul, and stings like a bee.
That's right. Doug, is Clay the sort of player, I know each club has a certain type of player they want to recruit. Is Clay that sort of player? Was he the DNA player that the Dogs find? Was it about a bit of luck, or the Doggies got a way of finding out this is what we want in our players when they interview them and recruit them to the club?
I think, Paul, good question. I think it's good recruitment as well. You look at him and you look at the way Luke Dalhouse played, and of course the other boy, Liam Picken. Oh. Mate, they just played like junkyard dogs. They just, as forwards, a lot of forwards I shouldn't say take shortcuts, but they don't tackle, chase, harass, and hound you. But those blokes did, and that was one of the most important parts of that footy team. So you give credit to the Bulldogs recruitment to get a boy like Clay Smith, and I'll say it again, it might sound like a broken record, but gee whiz, I'd love to see that kid continue to be able to play and to finish his AFL career at 25. I think I was 25, 24. Disappointing.
Like, he seems like a player that, I was just talking to Matty, I said, how many, what did he play? 100, 120? He played 53 games, I think.
55, yeah.
55.
How many games, Paul, did he play?
55.
55, Jesus. That's all he played. Okay, I knew he retired at a young age with a knee and that, but geez, I thought he played 100 plus.
It seemed like it. That's the sort of impact he had.
And he's a premiership player.
Premiership player. That's and that's what you play for, Doug. Is he the sort of player that would walk around with his medallion in the construction sites around Melbourne? I know he's working in construction. Would he strut his stuff?
It'd be right to do it. He can do what he wants. I'm not going to tell him. Might punch the living suitcase out of me. But anyway, no, he's a sort of player that I would love to play with. You know, we talk about the players that you'd love to play with, which we'll touch on a bit later with some of the guests that we got coming up as well. But he's the sort of kid that I'd love to play footy with, because you know what? He's going to give you everything, and every time he steps on over that white line, he's going to give 100%, and that's all you want to go with blokes. And he was certainly one of those players.
Well said, Doug. Well, listen, he's actually waiting now in our virtual waiting room. So we're going to have to say, Doug, one in, one out, my friend. You have been fantastic as always. And we're going to invite our Premiership champion in now.
Beautiful.
Okay, welcome back to Inside the Kettle podcast. And ladies and gentlemen, you would have heard our little explanation or about what's going to happen this week. And we did say we're going to get Clay Smith, and we have found in Clay Smith. Welcome to Inside the Kennel podcast.
Thanks for having me, boys.
Fantastic. It's great to see you, Clay. Clay, listen, as you know, this podcast is really trying to immortalise our players. And if somebody types in Clay Smith inside the kennel in 50 years' time, how would you like to be remembered? How would you describe yourself as a player for someone who has never seen you?
Good question. I think I was a player that sort of left everything out on the park. I gave everything every game, and I appreciated every game that I got. Grew up in a small country town and didn't really come from too much, and sort of got given the opportunity and grabbed it with both hands, and obviously got struck down with a few injuries, but was very lucky to come back at the right time in the right year to make a run at 2016. And I'm blessed to have played in a grand final and won a grand final. And the career probably didn't finish the way that I would have liked or any fans would have liked, but that's life sometimes. And I'm still happy and healthy and still able to do things that I enjoy. So it took me a couple of years to get over that, but I'm in a great place now, and I really did love my time with the Dogs.
When did you believe that you could be a professional footballer? Was it at any point, year 10, year 11?
I was about 17.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how did that happen? Was it just you're on the pathways? The pathways of TAC exist, of course, but
yeah,
you just looked around and said, "I'm better than most of these blokes."
Oh, I was always pretty good growing up, but basketball was my main priority. Sort of when I was younger, I played a lot of basketball, did a lot of camps, played in the Australian Cup, played for Victoria. So I played a lot of rep basketball and stuff like that, and then was travelling to Melbourne every Friday night with one of my mates from back home to play up here, because after 15, the camps are no longer in the country or regional areas, so you had to travel for it. So we would travel to Melbourne every Friday to play, and then that's when footy, I guess, Gippy Power sort of come around, like the under-15s, under-16s, and then your TAC Cup. So that was probably the more of an opportunity where I was, and that started to get a bit more serious. And then I had a really good bottom age year in the TAC, come runner up in the best and fairest as a bottom age player to Dice Heppel by a vote. I don't tell people that he missed 5 games for the Vic Champ or the Carnival. But yeah, I had a really good bottom age year, and that sort of was when I realised that I might actually make a living out of this. And then had a really good top age year, played in the Carnival in the Champs, captained a game and got MVP for Vic Country, and I just sort of probably grew a little bit and thickened up a little bit from a scrawny little kid at 15. And it sort of just kept rolling, and it just got better and better. And then went first round pick, and played a lot of games early. And then, unfortunately injury stopped it, but it would have been nice to see where it could have went.
So you did have that discipline and obviously that elite attitude towards sport. If you're doing that basketball, you're probably looking at your diet, you're probably looking at your early mornings and traveling and all that sort of stuff. So you're on your way quite early, weren't you?
Yeah, I did a lot of rep stuff, and I was always competitive, always loved the school sports, and good in the 800 meters and hurdles, and did cross country and stuff like that. Like I loved competing. I know I was always dedicated. I was a little bit of a rat bag. I loved the beer as well. but something that resonated with me was probably something that Bevo said to me. He said, that's probably what makes you such a good player. You live your whole life flat out. The way you train, the way you play, and the way you socialise. Like, you just, everything you do full on. And he goes, sometimes that can get you in trouble off the field. He goes, so it was more, he gave me the license to know where the line was, and said, when you do cross it, then he'll step in. But he sort of just gave me that responsibility as a male and as a man to know where it was. But had no dramas with me having a beer after a game, and sort of let my hair down a little bit, because it was something that I enjoyed and I probably needed. And there's players like that, and there's players that don't necessarily do that, but everyone's different. And it's it's probably one thing, he really understood each person individually. And
Clay, we did look at your game. I mean, was it 53 games you end up playing?
Yeah.
And it just belies the respect and your presence at the club for that period of time. I think you were there since, was it 7 or 8 seasons you had at the Bulldogs?
Yeah. Got drafted in 2011 and left in 2018. Yeah.
And look, there's lots to discuss around that early retirement. Why did you retire so early? And you said you struggled with a couple of years about that, and I guess it would have been being so young. What could you just walk us through that retirement phase?
So I think just purely from, I think it was 6 surgeries in 5 years, 3 ACLs and 3 cleanouts, all on the right knee. So the left one's all good. She's U-Butte, but the right one, she's done and dusted. Arthritis and that there now, no cartilage, no meniscus. So probably got a knee of a 50-year-old when I'm 29 at the moment. But it was the knee. I actually, after the grand final, had one of the best pre-seasons that I'd put in, and was flying, ready to have a good year. And I sort of tweaked it when we went to Mooloolaba in a pre-season camp, and I come back and had a clean out, and they told me I'd be back on the track within probably 3-4 weeks. And 7 months later, I'd still never done a main training session. So it was a long journey, and it was probably one after about 3 months that I knew it was probably never going to get better. I didn't probably tell the club that early on. They probably had a sense of it, but I sort of did. I'd build up for 2 or 3 weeks, and when I got to that really high intensity sort of Saturday kickoff session, my knee would just break down again, and then I'd go back to the start and do it all again. And I did that for 7 or 8 months. And sort of got that close to getting to join back in training and playing again. And every time I got that close, it just broke down again. So it was a pretty tough 7-8 months, just because everyone's sort of seen you get so close. Even myself, thinking that I was 1 week away from being back with the boys and possibly playing footy again. And unfortunately, that never happened. And I finished it. I come off the track one day and I couldn't get through the training session, and I just broke down in tears. And I remember speaking to Woody, and I just said to him, I said, I can't do it anymore, and that's it. I had to go in and sat down with Bevo for a good hour, and both of us just sat there and cried and didn't really say too much, and then had to get up in front of the group and let them know. But it wasn't fun.
Wow. Well, look, we're going to certainly get to the highs and lows of your career in this interview, and just hearing that just showed what how much the club meant to you, and I guess the resilience that you had to show through 3 ACLs, and and then tweaking it a 4th time. That's an incredible thing for you to happen, and you clearly didn't take that lightly, that decision. So having said that, Clay, there's been about 1,050 players that have pulled on the Guernsey, and you're one of 42 players to have a premiership medallion. You can't take that away from you. There it is.
I brought her in.
Magnificent.
I thought I better.
Well, that's amazing.
Does that live in the sock drawer, Clay? Where are we putting that, mate?
This thing's seen a lot of people's necks and a lot of beers, I'll tell you that much. It's actually just in the kitchen in one of the drawers.
We won't be giving your address away, don't worry, buddy.
She's been around the traps. So I've taken in, but I love it. Love being able to show people, a lot of family and stuff that have never seen one, never had one. Workmates and stuff at work now with me being in construction, a lot of Bulldogs fans, even a lot of just football fans. And yeah, it's a special piece of history and something that's special to me that I like to share with other people.
Absolutely. So take us back to where it started. So 2011, you were picked 17 in the draft. You got down to the Dogs and you were bestowed the honour of having the number 14 Guernsey, which is Callum Ward, who, you know, is just an incredible talent. You got that Guernsey. So I guess, you know, the club saw from the outset that, you know, you're a talented player. How was it when you first arrived at the club? What was your initial reaction and feelings?
Well, I think I got the number because it went from one concrete head to another. I think Will Minson called Cal Ward Cement Head, and then he pretty much called me Cement Head as well. So, but yeah, it was an honour to be their first pick. Macca liked those tough inside midfielders and fell into that category, so he was pretty keen to get me there. And I grew up going for the Bombers. Didn't really mind where I got drafted to. I just sort of wanted that opportunity, and from day one, walking in the doors, I absolutely loved it. They welcomed me with open arms, and it was a good time to get to the club. We had a lot of young players. Obviously, we weren't winning many games, but we had that really young core list of players that obviously ended up coming through to your 2016 flag, and a lot of them are still there now. But I had one probably early on vivid memory that I remember, and that's with Daniel Giansiracusa. He's in the locker beside me, and we were doing a pre-season session, probably my first 2 weeks, and I don't know whether I was tackling him or he was tackling me, but my elbow clipped him in the nose and he started pissing out blood. And I shit myself, like 18-year-old kid whacked Gia. I was like, I went over, I was like, I'm so sorry. And he looked at me with this like death stare. He just goes, you better watch your back. And I absolutely shit him. And we walked off the track at the end of the day, and he come up, put his arm around me, and just started laughing. He goes, mate, don't even worry about it. But like I dead set, like I just thought this bloke's he's gonna whack me.
And he's a pretty good looking rooster as well, Clay, isn't he?
Still is, don't worry. Silver Fox.
So aside from the Silver Fox as well, which players sort of took you in at the start? Obviously Bob was there and Matty Boyd. You know, there were a lot of really incredible people. Who did you sort of bond with?
Matty Boyd really took me under his wing. Probably loved my work ethic and the way I went about things. I'd love to train hard and sort of the way that I played, but my attitude towards training and stuff, and I really took a liking to Boydie and Daniel Cross in that aspect. They were probably two of the best trainers, so I tried to tag along with them. Sorry, tried to tag along with them as much as possible. Obviously Murph was there. He was unbelievable. He's a Gippy boy, so I had a fair bit to do with him. And then probably after a year or two, me and Griff became really good friends and spent a lot of time with Griff and his family, and went away on camping trips and shooting and stuff in Adelaide at the end of seasons. And yes, big country boy and like to get out of the city, so we got along pretty well.
And Clay, you had a lot of success in your first season. Generally, when draftees come in, they take a while with the upscaling of training and the intensity. But you end up playing about 16 or 17 games in your first year. Is that right?
Yes, I played 30 out of my first 36 or something. I think I played 16 in my first year and then 14 in the first 15 in my second. And then I did my first knee. So, yeah, I sort of come in ready to play. I had a good build on me. I was a skinny little kid, believe it or not. I was a little runt. I used to play up an age group and used to love throwing my weight around with the big boys and getting thrown around. But I guess that's where I learned to play the way that I did. And then, yeah, I sort of come in probably only 2-3 kilos off my playing weight for the rest of my career. I sort of come in at about 81, 82, I think, and played at 84, 85. So, yeah, I was sort of there, and I was always a very fit player, sort of top 3 or 4 runners at the club by the time I built the tank up. And so it was more the cramps that sort of got me, which the first game, kicking 4 in my first game and then getting subbed out at I think halfway through the third. The old cramp, it wasn't something I was used to, that step up in. And that's just a different pace and a longer game to what you're really used to. And training, you can do all the training you want, but the games are a bit different. And I'm probably one that gets a bit worked up out there and excited. And I think that sort of got to me a little bit in my first game. But yeah, I was fortunate enough to play a fair few games in my first year and 2 years. So yeah.
What a debut that was against the Eagles in your first match there to kick 4. The crowd were going crazy. And I think the fourth one you kicked, the sort of the ball flew over your head, if you remember it. You were under a lot of heat. Can you talk us through that goal? And I looked at your body afterward and you looked spent. So, what happened there?
Little Lukey Dalhouse broke out of a pack, I think, on the wing. He comes flying out. He had his dreadlocks. And kicked it over my head, and I was on Darren Glass, and I was running back inside 50 trying to paddle the ball to bounce up, and I got it up, and then he tackled me and took me to ground, and I got back up and sort of socketed it off the ground, and it just started to curl like a little, I don't know, like it just curled in perfectly. I don't know how it went through, but yeah, it was actually a crazy day. Like just getting to play round 1 in my first year and going out to that crowd was unbelievable. But then I couldn't even feel my feet after I kicked my first goal, and then I kicked the second one not long after, and then the third I was like, what's going on here? Like this doesn't happen.
Yeah.
But it was honestly, it was like I didn't even know what was going. Like I was lost. Like I was just loving the moment and enjoying it. But I was just a kid out there playing footy, and the ball fell in my hands at the right time, and yeah, I was lucky enough to kick 4.
Clay, I've watched a lot of your highlights in the last week, just doing due diligence with my research, and one thing you were extremely tough. You loved to almost pinball off people's body, but you had an instinctual ability to kick goals. You didn't seem to pause. You just had a crack, and you were pretty accurate as well.
Yeah, I guess probably that in under sort of having a crack style. I don't know if it comes from my family, but they never played footy. They played rugby. Mum had 5 brothers. They all grew up in New South Wales. They all played rugby league. My dad grew up in New South, played league. My pop and some of his brothers played AFL growing up, but predominantly all of the family played rugby. And so I watched a lot of that as a kid growing up. So tackling I was always fond of, and always played against the bigger kids in school. And my older brother, I used to play in his team, so I'd play under 14 or under 12s on a Sunday morning, and then under 14s that afternoon. And then when I went up to 14s, I'd play 14s and 16s. And so I always played against the bigger kids. So you had to be able to match it with them. So, yeah, I was a little tackling machine. And I guess that carried across into my career. And I wasn't the most skillful player, so I had to have something else. And that pressure and I guess that intensity and tenacity is something that I bring, and it's an important part to a team. You look at sort of like Libba, myself, and Pico that we had those 3 sort of just tenacious in and under boys that just love to get it out to the quicker players on the outside. You've got to be able to complement each other. So yeah, I love that side of the game.
Oh, it shone through, absolutely. And look, you came at a time that we had a bit of a lull, didn't we? You know, we played in 3 consecutive preliminary finals, and then, you know, things started, you know, there was a changing of the guard. And, you know, I guess there was a Brendan McCartney era where a lot of fans started to become impatient very, very quickly. And perhaps, you know, not necessarily understanding that, you know, we were building to something. Can you talk us through how those years were from, you know, I guess, particularly 2011, 12, 13, 14? You know, was it, did you feel the weight and pressure of those impatient fans?
I won't lie. I probably didn't feel a whole lot of the weight. I think some of the older boys probably would have a little bit, but being an 18-year-old kid getting to an AFL club, you can be a little bit selfish in a way that you're pretty much trying to get a game. You just want to play football. Obviously, you want to win, but we were such a young side, and I just was happy just playing. Like, I want to win more than anyone else, don't get me wrong, but 18, 19-year-old kid playing AFL was a dream. So, but it did. It started to take the weight, like, because when you start to play some good footy and probably don't get the result you want, you start to get frustrated. We started to build towards some good games. We were in games against good sides, but so it does. The more time you spend at a club, the more you become part of the fabric and part of the culture there. I guess the more you buy in, and the more it hurts when you lose. When you're just fresh and you don't really know too much about it. Yeah, it's a bit different, but yeah, it was a pretty tough couple of years. I don't think we won too many of my first games. I didn't sing the songs for a little while, and but it just made the wins and what come after it so much more special. And then obviously Bevo come in 2014, was it?
15, yeah. Well, the October 2014 was when it all sort of imploded, didn't it? And,
yeah.
You know, so how was that change when Bevo arrived? Was that the catalyst of what happened?
I think a lot of the building blocks were put in place with some of the players that we had at the club, the young kids and the talent that we had, and then I think just a fresh start and Bevo's sort of fresh philosophy, and he stripped it right back, and he looked at what we had as a playing group and not sort of what he wanted from a playing group. I think Brendan come from a very successful club in Geelong that was very mature and very structured, and they, like, you look at some of the stars that they'd played 200, 300 games. The average games was like 150. We had about 3 blokes that have played that, like. So it was a very hard game style for us to sustain for that much time, and we just didn't have the maturity around us probably to pull it off. But then Bevo sort of just stripped it right back and just said, like, we've got a whole group of young kids here, and he's like, that's how I want you to play. Go out and play like you did in TAC Cup, as you did as 18-year-olds. Believe in yourself, take the game on, back yourself in. And he'd rather us make a mistake trying something that was going to benefit the team than not take it, and sort of just gave a lot of, because as a kid, when you get to AFL, you don't want to muck up, you don't want to stuff up, and you feel like you let the team down, and for him to just take all that pressure off you of stuffing up and just going out and just playing, and I guess where that sort of started that exciting brand of taking the game on, the handball chains and that fast play, and that's sort of become renowned for who we were. It was just going out and playing footy and not worried about who we were playing against and how many games they'd played. It was just, we were good enough to be out there and play against them, and that's what we did.
Clay, do you still see that style of footy now as Bevo's matured in that area? Do you see a different Bevo or a different style of footy from when you were there?
I think you have to evolve. Teams start to work you out. They did it after the Richmond. I think they sort of took a little bit out of the way we played with that fast frenetic style, and then they played a lot with that forward momentum and forward handball, and teams work you out. It's minor adjustments, but that's what all the good coaches, look at Al Clarkson and the way he evolved the game, and he's still evolving, and if you don't change, everyone catches up to you and goes past you. So I think you've got to make tweaks here and there, but I think it comes down to personnel as well. If you're missing a few key players in a few key areas, it can hurt you. Obviously, you've got some good players coming through underneath, but there's a few key players that you need to have there to sort of set it all up. So, I still love the way they play. I think we've got a bit more to kick to down the line a little bit if we have to now. Got a bit more height than what we had when I was there, that's for sure.
Totally. Well, we're going to ask you about that later on in the interview, no doubt. But, you've spoken us through your first 2 seasons. You played, 16 your first season, 14 in your second, and then pop, your knee goes, you come back again, and then again. 3 knee reconstructions for a chap in his early 20s, having put some incredible games together early on. What, how did you get through that time? And, who was there to support you?
It was a long road. I'd never missed a game of sport due to injury before my first knee. I played state level basketball, played so much footy. Like, I was just, any sport I'd play, and I'd never missed a game. And then did my first knee, and I sort of said, I said, well, what's an ACL? I had here, and I said, well, how long am I going to be out? And they sort of said 9 to 12 months, and that sort of broke me. That, like, I was like, that's a long time out of footy. But got it done. Had the surgery, and it's a lonely road back. Like, when you're at a football club and there's 44 other blokes on a list, and most of them, or if not all of them, are doing what you want to be doing and running around, kicking a footy and having a laugh and playing. When the thing that you love most is like you're sort of sitting on the sideline watching, that's the hardest part for me. It's such a good place to be at a football club, but not so much when you're injured. It's sort of like watching someone else win the lotto with your ticket or something. Like you don't get the spoils of it. So it was tough, but I guess I smashed the rehab out, and then I come back pretty early on, passed all my strength tests, all my agility, did everything. And then I think I played 2 or 3 games in the VFL and played pretty well, averaged probably 30 and kicked 2 over those 3 games, like flying, come back, didn't put a foot wrong. And I was actually, so I did it in, was it round 16, I think, 2013, when I did my first against Essendon. And then literally a year later, I did it against Essendon in the VFL. And I was I got told I was going to play, Macca was going to play me that week that I did it in the VFL. I said, you'll play this week, and Griff and Adam Cooney, 2 pretty good players from the Bulldogs, they both got up from injury. So I went back and played VFL that week, and that ended up to happen. But that happens in footy. It could have happened the same thing in the AFL. Like, I hold no grudges whatsoever, but it was a year to the day, and against Essendon again in the VFL. So, the second one was probably the worst one, just because I got back and I was playing so well, and then it happened again so quickly, and then come back. The second one was probably even quicker. I think it was about 8 months. I think I only played 1 game, maybe 2 in the VFL. Same thing, come back and felt unbelievable and was playing good footy. And then I got back in the AFL side. We played Sydney in Sydney, and we beat them up there in the wet. And it was the first time we beat Sydney up there for a long, long time.
What a match.
It was unbelievable. And that was my first game back in the side. And it's sort of like you're back in the team. Things were great. And then we come back here and we played St Kilda at Marvel, and I think I had nearly 10 touches in the first quarter and the most on the ground. And then Murph kicked me a little chip pass up the wing and just took a mark and landed and sort of hyperextended, and I sort of felt something. And I just jogged off, and I went and said to the physios, I said, I don't think I've done it, but something didn't feel right. They took me down to the rooms and did the test, and pretty much looked at me with tears in their eyes and said, you've done your knee again. And I don't know if you've watched the game or you remember, but I went back out on the ground. So from all my rehab and that, my legs and the muscles and stuff were all strong, and were sort of holding. They were compensating for not having the ACL graft in there. And I just said to him, I said, look, I want to go back out there because I did the jog test downstairs. I could still jog and turn and change direction. And I said, as long as I can still run, I said, I'm going back out on the field. I said, I don't know if I'll ever go back out on the field again. Just done 3. So they let me go back out. And then just before halftime, I remember going out, and Mitch Honeychurch come up to me. He goes, "Oh, you all right?" And I said, "No." I said, "I've done the ACL." And he said, "Well, what are you doing out here?" I said, "I don't know." But we were up by, I think, 7 or 8 goals, nearly 50 points before halftime, and then I went down again.
Yeah, well, I remember because Jake Stringer absolutely had a day out, and I remember when you went off, there was a murmur across the crowd, and we suspected it may have happened again. And when you came back on, it was just the sense of relief from the Bulldog faithful. He's okay. And when you went down, I just remember you, sort of almost at centre half forward or near the 50-metre line, and you were just holding your knee, and the whole energy and atmosphere of the entire stadium was just sucked out of us. And the players probably stayed in the rooms with you after that, because the Saints came back. But it was a horrible moment for everybody.
Yeah. So yeah, that it was, and like I said, I wasn't sure if I was ever going to play football again. So there was no way I wasn't going back out there if I could run, and that happened, and then come back, and then obviously 2016 was the year that I come back. I think it was around 13, and played a few games in the VFL and got back in the side, and then sort of just started ticking the games off. And it was probably that 3, 4, 5 game mark where I was just so paranoid. I was like, well, this is where it's going to happen again. Because the first couple of games I felt unbelievable. And then it was just, and once I sort of got through that, I was back in the side, tick 4 off, tick 5 off, tick 6. And then started rolling around, and then it was 8, 9, 10. And I was like, and then, and then I played 13 straight games and played grand final.
Well, your 13th that year was a massive one. That's for sure. Can I just, before we get to the final series and what happened, what unfolded, in round 3 of that year, our captain went down with a knee injury, and here you are at the end of your sort of rehab. What was your connection with Bob, and were you able to support him at that time?
Well, unfortunately for a club, we had a fair few days going through. Spent my second one with Libba when he did his, Rourke Smith one, and then Murph, Jackie Redpath had done a couple. So we had a fair few boys go through some ACLs, which is unfortunate. But I leaned on Murph a lot during my rehab times. He took me out for regular coffees, just not to speak about anything else, just to pretty much just ask, how you going? And that was a big thing I learned from Murph. It was more just the care side of it. His genuine care for people. So there's not a whole lot you can say to someone after a knee. And for him, he sort of put his hand up and grabbed hold of the club when we were at our worst, and dragged us back through the shit to back on top, and missed out on the ultimate glory. As much as anyone will say he got the medal and stuff, it's hard if you're not out on the field. He was there in spirit, but it's a different thing being out there, and I feel so sorry for him. But that's what I say to people. I said, I did 3 knees, but I said I got to come back and play in that. Murph played 300 games, captained the club, and he missed out on it. And that's probably the way I put it in perspective with people. I was just very lucky the time that I did come back, and there's always an unlucky story as well, and that was Murph.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ironically, Clay, I saw an interview when you're a young bloke and you're fit as a Mallee Bull, and I can't remember the fellow who interviewed you, but he asked you some really fantastic questions. One of them, which was, would you prefer a Brownlow or a premiership? Very wisely, you said a premiership. And I'm sure at that time you had no idea that was going to perhaps evolve into a premiership, but I had to laugh to myself when I heard that.
Yeah, always been a team man over individual, don't worry.
Yes. Yeah, so talk us through, that magical run, Clay. Obviously you sat on the sidelines for probably, the first half of the season, and you saw that, this incredible juggernaut of a team just heading, into the unknown, and then you got your chance to crack in with the side. Talk us through that back end and the belief and the building and the camaraderie.
It was crazy. Obviously, 2015. Watched them, played our first final in a fair few years, lost to Adelaide. And then, the start of the next year, we just started to put things together and started winning more. And it just makes you hungrier to get out there, seeing the boys play so well and such an exciting brand of footy. So to come back in and get back in the side and keep a spot, it was something. I knew I belonged out there. It took me a while to actually believe that. By the end, I started to, and it's probably why I started playing some really good footy. I probably started to believe that I did belong out there. And once I got a few more games under my belt and played a few in a row, it sort of helps you with that belief. And it was an incredible journey. It really was. We didn't have too many superstars at that stage. Bont was still young, and a lot of the older boys had moved on, but we just had a team full of players that played for the team. And it didn't matter who got the touches, who kicked the goals. Everyone was out there playing for each other, and that's why we were so close as a group, and probably why we were so good. And it was something. It was special to be a part of. I remember going back. The last game of the year, we lost to Freo. We were on a roll, and then we lost to Freo in the last game of the year. We got pumped, and it was over in Perth. And then we had to go back to Perth 2 weeks later and play West Coast, who was the most informed team in the comp that year. They were nearly unbeatable over there, and they were probably the hottest team going into the finals, and everyone had written us off. And then, yeah, that was the 4-week roller coaster. Started from there, and it didn't stop. It was special.
Yeah, so that that final match going down, it was Pavlich's last game, and I guess you had a lot of personnel out at that stage. We probably had 5 or 6 really fantastic regular players, but Libber and McRae and Stringer, these boys were ready to come back. What sort of psychological boost did that give you?
Yeah, a lot. Well, thank the AFL for the bye before the finals. It was there before the finals started. Obviously, we didn't want the injuries, but it worked in our favour that year. It really did. But bringing some of your best players back into your team always helps. And you never want to lose, but it was probably a good refresher. We went over there. We got to spend some time in Perth, and we sort of knew what we did wrong. And then that whole next week, it was more just we sort of went back on footage and watched all the things we did right during the year and what made us such a good club. And just I don't think we reviewed the Fremantle game. I think we ended up just watching highlights of what we did, because it just wasn't us in that last round, and it wasn't something we needed to look back on. It was more about the things that we did that year that made us special and made finals, and what we wanted to bring in that first final. And we started red hot. Like, it was, I remember Ruffy running through 50 kicking goals. I was like, he doesn't do that. Like, everything worked. Everyone was doing the things that we needed, and everything just clicked. And then after that, we weren't going to be beat. Like, there was just this feeling in the group. It was just belief, pure belief. Like, yeah, you could have put us up against anyone, and I don't think we would have lost.
Well, we asked that question of Doug Hawkins last week. We said, who would have won a game against his almost unbeatable side in 1985? I don't know if you know the history of it. They made it to the prelim against, an incredible Hawthorn team, and just went down by 10 points. But that team was full of stars. And, Doug said, we feel we had you guys covered for talent, but no one was beating you guys in that final series. You just, you had the belief.
Yeah, it's weird. Like, some of the teams that you've seen win grand finals, and some of the talent in there, like, we didn't have a lot of those names, but like I said, like, you had blokes like Fletcher Roberts, Zane Cordy, Joel Hamling, like Shane Biggs, just role players that we wouldn't have been the team we were without them. We really wouldn't.
Clay, was it a case of underestimation by the opposition? Do you think that play a role in you guys having victory?
I don't think so. I think early in the year maybe, but maybe they thought, like, the first couple of games, it's a fluke. They're not going to be able to sustain this game style, the pressure. But by the end of the year, teams knew what we were and what we were about, and we started to gain that respect, and that's all you want as a team, respect off the opposition, and we become a good club, a hard team to play against, and so players started to know our names, but we weren't those big household names or anything like that. We were just a good team.
Clay, what role were you playing in that final series? What were you spending time in the midfield? Were you pushed down to the forward line? What was your role? What were your instructions?
Yeah, probably I played pretty much as a mid and a forward. So just rotating from forward to mid. Probably nearly 50-50 or 60-40, 60 as a mid and 40% forward. But you sort of just had your rotations. There's probably 3 boys in a rotation, and you go from forward to mid to off, and you just roll through that. So, whether that be on the wing or inside, predominantly played inside, but a fair bit on the wing. And then, you spend your time up forward, which I always enjoyed as well.
Well, you created a few opportunities up forward in the finals. You obviously kicked a really important goal against the Eagles, and then that heavyweight clash at the MCG against the reigning premiers, where you snagged 2 really amazing goals. When we just needed them. The Hawks had us almost on the ropes. We're probably 4 goals down. You guys didn't panic, and you kicked from memory just before halftime 2 rippers. Do you remember that?
I think Hunts gave me both of them, didn't he?
He did, yeah, absolutely. And he crossed the second one to you, that mark, but the first one was that tumbling one, in the pocket.
Yeah, Hunts kicked both of them to me. Forward is a very hard position to play as a small forward. You're not necessarily the target very often at all. So you sort of got to make your own luck and get in the right spots. But I just turned up to as many contests as I could, and with the tank that I had, I sort of got up the ground and got back and sort of made sure I was always sort of around about. So you just, sometimes it falls in your lap, but when you do get the opportunity, you got to take them and put it through the big stick. So I didn't have the probably the prettiest kicking style, but it seemed to go through more often than not. Yeah,
it wasn't the most orthodox, did it? And but my goodness, in that game, especially that goal that you kicked from the pocket, it just it was such an important one, and it was a tough one, and momentum was arrested back our way. And do you remember the third quarter? We were just absolutely unstoppable that quarter, and I've never heard the MCG until the grand final day just roar as much as it did.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. My fondest memory, I reckon, was the grand final parade. That was special. And then even running out onto the grand final day, like, you could not hear a word. Like, it's you can't even, it's crazy to put it into words. Like, not a spare seat in the house. Like, you come out and it's just chaos. Like, it was, unbelievable.
Well, is it a different game of footy? Is the grand final just a different game than the other finals games that you played that year?
I think the build-up and everything like that is. The grand final parade, the media, everything, the crowd. But personally, once that siren goes and the ball goes up, it's just another game of footy to me. And the crowd just becomes white noise. Yeah, it's weird. I don't really notice the crowd during games. I don't know if it's just me or other players, but once it's game on and the siren goes and it's live, I just sort of switch into a different gear. But you can't not hear it when it's just you're doing your warm-ups and you sort of get a chance to actually have a look around and sort of soak it all in. And then the 2 hours that you're playing footy, you don't have time to think and just stop and have a look around. It's flat out for those 2 hours, and then once you win or lose, you sort of get to soak it in again. So it was lucky enough that we won, and we got to spend a fair bit of time out there. And we went back out afterwards and sort of just sat in the middle of the ground, and it was just like, we actually did that.
Absolutely. You talk about, not sort of noticing the crowd. I've just finished Tom Boyd's memoir, and which is an incredible read. He talks about the preliminary final when you went up to Sydney, and just the fact that he felt like he was at a Bulldog game because we outnumbered them. And he said for him, that was such an inspiring sort of thing. And we just felt that we had an army behind us, and he really credits, the crowd as having a really big impact on that. But I guess you go in a combat zone, so it's different styles.
Yeah. And it's probably a little bit to where you played too. Tom being a key forward and probably stationary a little bit more. he probably sees the whole ground in his vision, whereas when you're in the middle and you're sort of in the middle of the chaos, you're running both ways, and that's probably just the way I played footy too. I don't really concentrate on more than one thing. It's all or nothing. So yeah, it was probably a little bit of the way I played, and but yeah, as you said, everyone's different, but like you hear the noise, but yeah, crowds when I'm in game mode, it's you don't notice a whole lot.
Amazing. We talk us through the prelim, because you obviously you'd had a lot going on in your world at that time emotionally, and for you to come out and deliver what happened and kick 4 goals, what was that evening like?
Numb, probably the best word to describe it. The only game of the final series where I didn't really celebrate. It was just, yeah, tough. Losing a mate. It just, yeah, I was on the piss 3 nights that week with boys from back home, and just sitting around a campfire and just talking about memories of Dale and the good times, and probably couldn't really believe that it happened. And yeah, the club offered for me to not play, and I said there's no way I wasn't going to play. Dale would want me to play, and there was and it was probably an escape for me, to be honest. You sort of get to go out there and zone out for a couple of hours and just think about footy and not about everything else running through your head. Yeah, it's not something you want anyone to go through, losing a mate so young and someone so close. But yeah, it was obviously probably played the best game of my career, without a doubt. And in probably the biggest game of my career. But yeah, it was, I still remember like the TV interview after it and swearing and saying how much I loved him. And, but yeah, it sort of got in the rooms, and I just didn't feel much. And it probably wasn't until a couple of years later when you look back and watch the game back. It took me a couple of years to watch it all back and probably appreciate what I did and what we did as a team. But yeah, it was weird week. It was. And then club flew me back grand final week back down to the country in a helicopter to go to the funeral, and I spoke at the funeral and flew back up, and I was at training that afternoon.
Wow.
Something I wanted to do. I had to be back there for it, but I wanted to come back up and get back into footy and get back into grand final week. So yeah, it was a tough couple of weeks.
Yeah, what a surreal experience, to go through that, and the emotional roller coaster of everything happening, and somehow coming back and produce what that is. What do you attribute that to? Is it you being able to ride the emotion, or is it a mental toughness?
Oh, I honestly don't know how I ran it out. Like I did. Like the only thing I can say is I did that for him. Like. I remember having his armband on, being in tears before the game, asking the boys if they would wear them, and they did. And just putting the armband on like I was a mess before the game even started. Kicked the first goal of the game, and just pure emotion. Like it was, yeah. I just played that whole game on emotion. Like I really did.
Well, that goal you talked about. Oh, sorry. The goal you talk about there, you got the ball off the half back line, and I think you may have kicked it to Dullhouse on the wing, perhaps, and you're out of the screen there. And Dullhouse put it on his boot quickly, and we got it up forward, and I think Zane sort of took the ball, and suddenly you are in the forward 50 receiving the handball. I don't know how you covered that territory. So you must be running on air. Yeah. Start of the games, it's always hot and pretty quick pace, but yeah, it sort of fell into place. I was running at full tilt off the half back, and then sort of kept running, and then I think Zane fumbled it, and it just sort of happened when he looked up. I was running past, and he dished it off, and yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And what
I think a lot of players would have been overwhelmed of the occasion with that sort of tragedy happening in the background?
Yeah, look, I didn't know any other way to deal with it, to be honest. And like I said before, that was my escape. Probably get away from it for a couple of hours. That's all you thought about for a week, and it consumes you. And it was probably the one place that you can go out and you don't really have time to think about much else when you're going out there in a game like it was. And just like I said, when I go out on a footy field, that's all I sort of think about. So it was a place for me to sort of get away from the thoughts in my head, and just go out and be with the boys and be around a group that support you, and probably appreciate how much good friends are. And yeah.
Wow. And you know, then the week ahead after that was just you know, an incredible experience. You've spoken about the grand final parade, all the media build up, the training. You know, that probably 15,000 people at Whitten Oval for that Thursday training run. Unbelievable. How was that, the build up? Did you guys feel that you were a good chance to win?
Yeah, I don't think you could write us off. We beat West Coast and West Coast, knocked off the three-peat, and then beat GWS in Sydney. Like I said earlier, put us up against anyone, play anyone anywhere, and we were going in there with a fighter's chance and believing that we could win. It was just, and that's what it felt like. It really did. It was a crazy week. I had a fair bit of media that week. Was playing a fairly decent game the weekend before, and with all the other stuff going on, a fair few people wanted to have a chat, and so there was a fair bit going on that week. And then just the grand final parade, I remember Bevo just saying, he said, "Guys, these don't come around very often," and just said, "Just soak it in, enjoy it, just go out there and take this day as it is. Don't shy away from it. Don't try and think about the game tomorrow. Just go out there and enjoy the day for what it is." And that was pretty cool.
Yeah. Was Bevo concerned about the energy levels of the team after being on the road for so long, Clay? And were there any niggles there that players were concerned about inside the four wall?
I think you get pretty tired towards the end of the year, but I think when you're playing in a semi-final, prelim final, grand final, you just find that little bit. It's more you're playing on adrenaline, excitement than anything else. When you get to a late in the season, I think, and you're not having a great season, and you're probably not playing for anything, you're not going to make finals, you start to feel niggles a little bit more than what you would if you are playing finals and you're flying. It's a mentality thing. It's for a club that hadn't played in finals for a long time, and we were just on a high. There was a few boys. I think Dale Morris played with a broken back. I didn't even know about that during the final series. He was getting a jab in his back, but you don't feel much when you're out there, and when you're winning games, especially and big finals, you worry about their injuries during the week, and you get up for the weekends, and I think there would have been a fair few boys that were pretty sore, but you didn't have a choice. You just joined in.
Looking around the room in the room before the game, or at half time, was there anyone that you sort of saw a different look in their eye? Like you said, this person's here for a battle. Like, I know Pico had an unbelievable final series. Was there anyone that you just felt rose to next level?
No, I couldn't individualise anyone. I think everyone was there, as a team. Just you knew that no one was going to let you down. I guess it really was. It was, you had complete faith in every single person around you that they were going to get the job done. And some of the heroics during some of the games, Pico's game, Bordy's, Ruffy, there's superstars all over the ground. It's probably not until you go back and watch it back and see all the little moments and the things that add up to the big moments. But Pico was he was the standout in the final series.
Wow. Absolutely. And were there any moments that, you know, because you sort of say you're in the game zone, you're probably not appreciating how amazing it is at the time, or maybe you did, but you know, having looked back and, you know, with the joy of time, is there something that just sort of stands out that even now you just go, wow, I was there for that?
Probably not one moment, but just looking back on the final series, like, it all goes so fast, that 4 weeks. Like, the games, you win and all this hype, and then you're into the next game, and then 4 weeks later you've won a grand final, then you're going away on a holiday. And then, yeah, what you did for that club, 1954, like, it's just like you don't understand the history that you actually made, I don't think. And it's starting to sort of get to me now, like, but it hasn't happened very often, and you don't even know when it's going to happen again. Like, it's, yeah, I guess it takes a while to probably appreciate how much that meant to the footy club and to the fans, and to just like the feel good footy stories. Like, I think everyone that didn't go for Sydney Swans was going for the Bulldogs that year. Like, anyone you speak to, like, they were going for us. They were following our finals journey, and it's special. Like, we sort of touched a lot of people, and people liked the way that we played and what we were doing. It was to be a part of that, and a lot of people remember it. And, yeah.
Yeah, well, 62 years is a long time. My dad was born in 1954, and, you know, there was a lot of supporters who said, we never think we were actually going to see this. And, you know, the relief, and, you know, I'm in my 40s, and just, you know, to have experienced it, you just feel like we've done it now. And whatever happens from now, at least you can't take that away from us. And
saying to me, I can die happy now. You want to play. Like, someone say that, I'm like,
yeah, that's like, incredible. That's right. And you made that happen.
You don't understand how much footy can mean to some people. Like, yeah, I can die happy now. I've seen the Bulldogs win a flag. It's like, Jesus, don't put that on me.
Yeah, totally. Well, on behalf of everyone, we thank you, because it was, you know, it was an incredible series, and your contribution was phenomenal. And, you know, without you, that story doesn't get told the way it did, certainly. So, you know, amazing. And that medal, you know, definitely don't keep it in that kitchen drawer. That's got to come out. I'd be wearing it everywhere.
Clay, before we leave you, I just want to ask you this question. Once again, looking at your highlights, what was your best tackle?
Charles Selwood.
Yep. I was just going to say, I saw you lay him out. And it stuck like glue.
He didn't either. He didn't like it at all.
Oh, and the momentum you had, and you just took his feet out against a very similar player to you, a very strong, hard at it play. But it blew me away. That's got to be some sort of photo taken of that, or fantastic, absolutely fantastic tackle. You still into your Fords?
Into my what?
Ford cars. That was what you mentioned in the interview.
I still like my old muscle cars and stuff like that. But I'm coaching footy now. I'm the coach out of Point Cook Footy Club.
Oh, is Steve Kolonyuk down there? And
yeah, he's my assistant coach.
Right.
Yeah.
And is his son Billy down there?
Billy and Tyler, yep.
Awesome. Okay, fantastic. So how's the coaching career going then? You enjoying it?
Loving it, yeah. It's probably what brought me back to footy, to be honest. I sort of had that lull period where I sort of didn't know what to think of the game, because the game chewed me up and spat me out. And then I got my love back for the game. I always loved it, but I was I knew that if my body was right, that I could be out there. So it was hard to sort of go to games. I'd watch them all, but I just couldn't go. But then I started coaching a couple of years ago down at Williamstown CYs, just as a part-time sort of thing, and then was out at Point Cook as an assistant last year. And I love it. I love giving back to the footy world and to the footy club, and sort of passing on my experiences and knowledge of the game. And yeah, I got a real passion for it and absolutely love it, and signed a 2-year contract to be the head coach out there for the next couple of years. And got little Lukey Dalhouse down to the club.
Oh, wow.
And,
Yeah.
and what's going to be? You're going to use any Bevo-esque style of coaching, mate? What's going to be influenced? How are you going to coach? Are you going to bring that play to your abilities, play with freedom?
Yeah, definitely. I'll be promoting them to play a pretty attacking sort of game and play with a bit of flair. And obviously, I like the contested side of the game. So it'll be built around the contest and stuff, but bringing everyone's strengths into the game. That everyone's different and everyone brings a different strength to the game, and the more you can help each other be better, the better we will be. And it doesn't always have to be you that's doing all the good stuff. So it's been good, loving it. We're into our 3rd week pre-season. I took them all down to the boxing gym last night. Actually, had a couple of fights this year myself, and they've all been giving me a bit of shit. They all come watch me last one, and so I got them down there to show them how hard boxing training really is. So put them through their paces last night.
You got an appreciation for the pros when you watch them now, Clay?
Yeah, definitely. I love it. I've had 3 fights now, and I really enjoy it. I did it more for the fitness, but it's probably the one thing that I can do now that's still competitive and still get that little bit of edge on me. So yeah.
Awesome. Now, before we let you go, we've got a tradition here in the kennel where we finish off with a 60-second Bulldog quiz. Now, we're pulling that on you without any warning, that's the joy of it.
That's fine.
Yeah, we do give you, so 60 seconds will be on the clock. We do give you the choice of category between 2 things. So it's either Bulldog Guernsey numbers or Bulldog debutantes, so Bulldog debut matches.
No, go jersey numbers.
Fantastic. All right. So let me share the screen here. You're looking confident. All right.
No.
Yep. 60 seconds will go. The further you get, the more points. So there's we start off with 1 point questions and then it increases.
Yeah.
All right. So
Hey, Matty, we have a list, Clay. So you're a bit like where'd we get it from, Matty? Where you go on a list?
That's
comparing you to our other guests.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Top gear.
Top Gear. It's like the Top Gear. Dougie Hawkins is on 16 points. He's the one to beat, Clay. So so good luck. The 60 seconds is on the clock. Your time starts now. The number 57 Guernsey has never been worn at senior level. True or false?
True.
Thank you. That's false. Sorry, it is true. Brad Hardy famously wore his number 4 Guernsey after a clash with Mick Malthouse in 1986, and he removed it and threw it on the ground. True or false?
True.
Correct. Tom Boyd wore the number 15. True or false?
False.
What is the highest number to be worn in a senior game for the club?
50.
It's 60. Who wore the number 6 Guernsey in the 1954 grand final?
Ooh, Ted Whitten. No.
Oh,
Yeah.
It wasn't Ted. No,
Right.
It was Charlie Sutton. Who wore the famous number 3 Guernsey directly before Mitch Wallace?
Chris Crett.
Which player had to wear Shane Biggs's number 24 Guernsey in 2017 because he turned up to the stadium and he was a late in?
Lin Jong.
Yay! What number did Callan Ward wear at the Dogs? Callan Ward.
14.
Thank you. Was that time up?
Yeah.
Time up.
Oh my gosh. All right, well done. I'll calculate your scores there. It's going to be very close, and I'll put those up on the board. Clay, you did very well. How did that feel? Pressure?
Yeah, different. Yeah.
We can tell you're competitive, Clay. You haven't lost it.
I never will, I don't think.
I don't think any of our guests will, in fact.
No. I think you'll find that.
Brilliant, Clay. Well, listen, we want to thank you from the bottom of our hearts for joining us inside the kennel, and we wish you all the very best in the future. But thank you for everything you achieved, and you're a Bulldog immortal, that's for sure, and you're incredibly popular. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
We can't wait to see what you bring to Point Cook, mate. We'll get down there and have a look.
Thank you very much, boys. I
Good on you,
appreciate
Clay. Thanks very much, mate.
it. All right, cheers later.
Red in my heart, white in my veins, blue in my eye, red, white, and blue in my brain.